This is episode number 29 of the Feed Me, Fuel Me podcast with our special guest, Garett Bischoff. Welcome to the Feed Me, Fuel Me podcast. My name is Jeff Thornton, alongside my co-host, Michael Anders. Each week, we bring you an inspiring person or message related to our three pillars of success: manifestation, business, fitness, and nutrition. Our intent is to enrich, educate, and empower our audience to take action, control, and accountability for their decisions. Thank you for allowing us to join you on your journey. Now let's get started. We would like to thank our sponsor, FitAid. If you're serious about your performance and recovery, go with FitAid. FitAid is the perfect pre- and post-workout supplement product. If you're dragging pre-workout, FitAid contains natural ingredients to give you that boost and pick-me-up you need without the jittery effect. And if you're looking for recovery after your workout, FitAid has branched-chain amino acids or BCAAs, L-glutamine, L-arginine, vitamin C and D3, glucosamine, turmeric, CoQ10, and raw organic agave to accommodate the glycogen window and provide your body with a complete and clean recovery. Be sure to give them a try at lifeaidbevco.com, your local gym, or a grocery store near you.
Hey, what's going on, guys? Welcome to episode number 29 of the Feed Me, Fuel Me podcast. Mike Anders here with my co-host, Jeff Thornton, and our guest today is Garett Bischoff, currently of the Sonoran Desert Institute, and you might recognize the name from the world of professional wrestling and sports entertainment, as it is so been called as of late in the last 10 years. So welcome to the show, homie. How you doing, man?
Doing great. Glad to be here.
Thanks for being here, brother.
Thanks for having me.
So a quick backstory on the connection here. We just got back from Tampa for Rush Club 009, and Garett was very instrumental in getting that thing to be the production that it became. It was our first show outside the deserts of Arizona, and so we really appreciate all the hard work and connections that you put us in contact with to make it what it was. And you're huge in the veteran community. You know what Sonoran Desert is doing now in terms of vocation, post-military, and giving vets access to their GI Bill to do what they do and learn a trade is incredible. Mm-hmm. So from all of us vets, thank you very much. But for everybody who's not familiar with who you are, where you come from, and what you're doing now, give us a quick rundown on your evolution to SDI.
So, as mentioned, I spent a lot of time in the professional wrestling world. I grew up around it. For those of you, the wrestling fans out there, you know where I come from. It came to a point where I realized that my contract was going to be up with who I was then, and I wasn't sure what I was going to do. I spent so much time, and that was my passion and my dream to be a wrestler my whole life. And then I achieved it, and I was living it, and it was huge, and it was great, and it was spectacular, and I was on top of the world in Cloud 9, and there was nobody that could get me off of it. But that world is very unpredictable. It is extremely unpredictable, and it can drop you and burn you just as fast as it got you, just as fast as you got there. And through wrestling, I made a lot of great relationships. I had the opportunity to meet a lot of people in that world, and I'll get to a couple of them here in a minute that kind of led me to where I am now. But anyway, so kind of the Reader's Digest version of that, minus all the gory details. It came to a point where I realized that they weren't going to have me back, and I wasn't really wanting to go back. Mm-hmm. So there was nobody put up a fight either, one way or the other, and my contract ended. Mm-hmm. At that point, I was about 30 years old. I had dedicated the last 6, 7, 8, 9 years to training and preparing and focusing on that one career path only. Other than that, the only skills that I really had for career-wise would be a Harley mechanic or a professional bartender or painter. And not that there's nothing wrong with any of those, because I did all of those for a long time, and that's what I survived off of. but it just wasn't what I wanted to do for the rest of my life.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And so I became lost.
Sure.
I got out. And I had no skills, no job training of sorts. I was passionate about a lot of things, but passion only gets you so far.
Mm-hmm.
So there's a period of about 8 months or 9 months where I really just did not know what to do. I was lost. Depression started to set in. I found myself sleeping until 11 o'clock in the morning or noon. Maybe I'd go to the gym, and I'd come down and turn my PlayStation on, and then usually by 4, 5, 6 o'clock in the evening, I was probably cracking an adult beverage or 2 or 4. And that was becoming routine. It's okay to do that once in a while.
Yeah.
But I started to notice a pattern, and it was becoming more and more. And finally, luckily, obviously, I have a beautiful wife who is extremely strong and motivating. And she was very good. She didn't get on my case about anything. She didn't tell me I had to do anything, but in her own very own motivating way, she was helping me build that back up.
Mm-hmm.
And kind of find what I wanted to do or where I wanted to go or how I wanted to do it, but also to understand that that wasn't me.
Mm-hmm.
I was defining myself as that person.
Right.
That's who I was. I was Garett Bischoff, the wrestler,
Mm-hmm.
the guy that people knew because of that. And when you put an when you ID yourself like that, and you don't allow yourself to just be you, that puts up a big wall. And it's easy to do. It's very easy to do and I didn't even realize I was doing it.
Mm-hmm.
That's the thing. I never even realized it. And it wasn't in an arrogant way. It was just, it's my own selfish ego.
Right.
Right.
So anyways, she really, really helped me identify that, come to the conclusion that, you're still Garett Bischoff. Who cares if you're not, on TV or in the ring? Nobody cares about that. Your friends don't care. The people in your life don't care. Your family doesn't care. You're you. That's what they care about.
Mm-hmm.
And that really started to kind of help me pull the nose up and realize, like, yeah, you're right. I don't have to, there's other things I have to offer besides just being Garett Bischoff, the wrestler.
Sure.
And it was around that time that circling back to some of those people in the relationships that I made because of wrestling, I had met. We have a family friend that was also a part of. He was one of the executive producers for the wrestling company that I was with at the time.
Okay.
And he, by chance, met a young man about my age in Nashville, Tennessee, at a Harley shop one day, and he's like, "Man, you just remind me of this guy. I got to introduce you to my buddy Garett." So he did via phone call. We met. Over the phone. We talked. Say, "Oh yes," we start shooting some ideas around. He's a Marine.
Hoorah.
Yeah, he's a Marine. He's a really good guy. His name's Gabe. And so Gabe and I started talking over the next couple of months about different ideas we could do. We talked about doing a gun shop, and we talked about this, we talked about that. Well, then Gabe introduced me to another guy who had another podcast at the time, whose name is Zeke. Zeke had a podcast called Talking Lead at the time. And he's like, "Oh man, we'd love to have you on the podcast. Wrestler, gun guy, gun enthusiast. That'd be great. Let's, sure, absolutely, let's do that. Let's have fun." Well, Zeke and I hit it off so well that we've stayed friends. Now I'd never met this guy, just talked to him on the phone a bunch of times. So fast forward to a few months down the road. I think we're coming up on November, December time period. About 2 years ago now. And like, hey, what would you think? He introduced me to the concept of this school, Sonoran Desert Institute, and what they're doing. I said, well, that's awesome.
Yeah.
You can go to college, learn how to work on guns. I mean, that's time. Why are we still talking about it? Let's go.
Let's roll, right? Yeah.
Right.
And at that time, I really didn't have any idea of what their big picture was, but I didn't care. It sounded great, and I was like, let's do this.
Mm-hmm.
So they offered me some programs, and in return, I was going to do some PR work and
Right.
do some stuff like that. And this was before the school what it is now.
Right. kind of using your name as a platform
A
in
little,
trade a little bit.
yeah, a little bit. And
Okay.
so this is before, like I said, this is really before a lot of things have changed within the school now. But so, anyways, I started doing these programs, and I was enjoying it so much. I was like, this is awesome, and it's online college, and you're talking to a guy here that barely made it out of high school. Like I told you earlier,
Yeah.
the only reason I graduated is because they didn't want me there anymore. Just get rid of this guy, let him pass, make him go away. So college was not in my future, at least not any kind of serious college for that matter. But I was really enjoying it. I found myself really getting sucked into it. And we were talking one day, and I said, listen, if there's ever an opportunity for me to actually work for you, I would really be interested in talking to you about that. Came here for Christmas that year. It was Christmas Eve day, actually. And I got a phone call from Zeke. Said, "Were you still interested in doing that?" And I said, "Absolutely." And 8 weeks later, I was signing a contract with him.
That's
and
awesome.
I haven't looked back. I've been running wild with it ever since. And the amazing growth and the people I've met, I mean, it's incredible. And where we're planning on going in the future, it's just amazing. It really
Right.
is.
That's incredible.
So that's why you're out here right now, is because you guys were sitting down at the round table,
Yep.
all the powers that be, and kind of
Yep.
casting the vision and starting to put the building blocks in place for the next phase.
Yep.
That's
So,
awesome,
we're
man.
talking about all the stuff we got going for 2017 and
Mhm.
even reaching into 2018.
Beautiful.
Our offices are located here. It is an online college, so we don't
Mhm.
have a campus here, but our headquarters are based out of here. So,
Yeah.
which is nice because I get to come back. I got family here. My mom and dad have a home in Cave Creek. I got some friends in Cave Creek, so I have the fortunate opportunity to mix business with family, and
Mm-hmm.
it's been real good.
That's awesome,
That's
man.
interesting,
That's
man.
awesome. So let's backtrack a little bit, because I want to touch on a little bit more in depth about your origin story. So you not only played in and made a career from professional wrestling, but you grew up in professional wrestling.
Mm-hmm.
And for all of us sitting here, we all grew up in that attitude era
Right.
of the now WWE, then WWF, and the WCW prior to the merger. So you spent many a night in the arena, and hobnobbing and rubbing elbows with some of our heroes.
Yeah, really.
What is that like when living in it?
If just one word, magic.
Yeah,
It's I didn't realize it then,
Sure.
obviously, because I was young. But looking back at it now,
mm-hmm.
and you know how it is when you're used to something,
It's just normal.
it's just normal for
Yeah.
you. You
Mhm.
know, it's very normal. So I've been asked that question a lot of times before, and people don't always necessarily understand why I don't get so excited about it.
Right.
It's not that I don't appreciate it or love it. It's just it
Mhm.
was normal to me.
Yeah.
But it was just magical. I mean, picture being 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 years old, and
Mhm.
all these guys, and even then, I had an inside look on everything. Obviously, I knew I was smart to what was going on,
Yeah.
but that didn't matter. I was around all these characters that are larger than life,
Right.
and when you get the opportunity to hang out with the guys, same thing. Even though I was used to it, doesn't mean I wasn't a fan.
Right.
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 So it was magical. I was very fortunate. My sister and I both had a amazing childhood.
Mm-hmm.
Got to experience and see and do a lot of things that most people, or a lot of people don't ever get to do or see
Sure.
or experience. So very lucky, very fortunate. And some of those people, to them, that was like family to me.
Mm-hmm.
Those were my extended family,
Mm-hmm.
and not just the wrestlers. The people in the office. I remember my dad
Sure.
he'd let me skip school and he'd bring me in the office. Half my education more of my education probably came from hanging around in the office and listening in on his conference calls than what I was learning in a high school.
Mm-hmm.
So that was cool. That was a lot of fun. And the guys, the guys that set up the ring, guys that set up the lights. I
Mhm.
knew everybody.
Yeah.
So it was a big playground, and it was a lot of fun.
So when you were making your break into the industry, because there's a lot of guys trying to do it. There's actually a guy I was in Boy Scouts with way back in the day, who's now a professional wrestler on the local circuit, somewhere in the Destin area. And there's I didn't realize until I caught up with him some years ago how many local wrestling organizations there really are. So if you don't grow up in it, how hard is it to get, on a national, what were the big three? The WWE, WCW, and the ECW at one point. They were all competing for market share. So if you're not talented and grow up in it, how hard is it to break into those circuits?
Well, then it was different than it is now. So
Okay.
back then it would have been a little easier.
Really?
Honestly. Now you have an extremely steep, slippery hill to climb.
Okay.
To get in there, and that's just to get in and possibly get your foot in the door on their farm league level, so to speak. And I don't mean to sound discouraging or negative about it, because that's not why I'm saying it, but it really is. I mean, it's the same as going to Hollywood and becoming the next Brad Pitt.
Mm-hmm.
It's not that it can't be done, but the chances of you being that one,
right,
extremely difficult.
Mm-hmm.
Extremely difficult, and it's a painful hill.
Sure.
And it can be very a dangerous hill.
Yeah.
At that, because it's very easy to slip and.
Right. So what's more difficult now than back then?
Well, now there's really only one place to be.
Right.
There's not other places to go, and at least and make make a decent living. There's plenty of things you can do, plenty of places to go, but they're not that are really going to pay what you're wanting to get paid.
So they monopolized it pretty much.
Yeah. Yep. So there's really one good place to go. And remember, you're fighting. What is it that you have, or I have, or you have that's going to make you stand out from those other 300 people that are doing the exact same thing right now?
Right.
What it factor did what do you offer that's different?
Mm-hmm.
And it's not impossible by any means, but it is very very hard, and you have to be willing to dedicate and sell your soul.
Mm-hmm.
This is not something that you just go, I think I'm gonna try this today.
Right.
It doesn't work that way.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't work that way. You have to grind, and you have to go, and it's a dedication.
Sure.
It's a dedication. In the days of one of the big things that you'll hear a lot of us talk about back then, it was easier to keep the magic alive.
Yes.
Okay.
The magic in professional wrestling is not there anymore because of social media, and everybody's got an iPhone, and everybody can just tweet and touch, and it's just it.
You don't have to wait for Monday Night Raw.
They took the anticipation out of it.
Yeah.
It's like if you had Christmas every other week, then Christmas just wouldn't be that cool anymore. It wouldn't be fun.
Right.
It's special because it comes around once a year.
Mm-hmm.
It's the same way with wrestling. Back then, there was still a surprise factor. There was an element of, was that? No, that wasn't supposed to happen.
Yeah.
That's for real, right there.
Right,
you know what I mean? And that's gone.
Okay.
David Copperfield's bag of tricks has been exposed to everybody, so David Copperfield's not that cool anymore.
Right.
It's the same theory.
Sure.
Unfortunately.
That's what's interesting to me, because first I want to say thank you to you and your family, man, because like Durs was saying, you guys, that whole generation was a huge part of me growing up. I remember your dad being on the promotions, and like you said, that surprise that built up where you used to have like the Generation X coming over to WCW, NWO starting this clash, and they're going to these different promotions, and you're like, there's no way this cannot be real. Like, I remember as a kid, people were just telling me, this is fake, Jeff, this is fake. I was like, no, this is actually happening. These guys are falling off, ladders falling on the tables, man. So, dude, whether you know it or not, you've been a part of my life since I was like this high, brother.
I had nothing to do with that era. I was there just enjoying it like you were, but it was a lot of fun. It was different, and that part of it, that element of it's just not there anymore.
Right. Because of like reality television and like just having access to the behind the scenes that everybody has now.
It's been desensitized.
That's crazy.
Yeah. I never even thought about that, that's insane.
Well, I saw those the documentaries of like the Triple H and The Rock. And what was interesting about those guys, and I don't know if you can expand on it even further, is that, like you said, they sort of mentioned you had to build into your role as a wrestler. It's like, what are you going to do tonight that's going to grab that spotlight? Like, I remember on the Rock's documentary, he said he was really good at, just coming off with just candid statements off the top of his head and making that electrifying statement and getting the crowd, like, it's sort of like reveling to be the bad guy and then eventually becoming the good guy.
Mm-hmm.
How much does that play a part, like when you're starting to build your career? Because it takes a lot of charisma.
Mm-hmm.
You see, I mean, it's just how big a factor is becoming a brand name in that industry. It's all of it.
It's all of it. Yeah, it's if you don't have charisma and you don't have that unique, The Rock became The Rock because he was able to be that witty, cocky, he had, all you got to do is pop that eyebrow, and
Yeah.
it's like, you send 10,000 people on their feet,
Yeah.
So to be able to do that it's amazing, it's awesome, and not everybody can do it. Everybody thinks they can do it,
Right.
but not everybody can do it.
Mhm.
And it's you have to be able to kind of dig down deep and find out, what is it that I have that and the trick to doing it is to not force it. Because if it comes off like you're acting,
Forget about
you'll get some of it, but it's like, that's cool, but the reason why Stone Cold did so well as Stone Cold is because it's just him.
Yeah.
He just turned up. He just takes who he
Okay.
is and just cranks it,
Okay.
cranks it. He's not acting, so it comes off,
Sure. That's very interesting when it comes to the authenticity of it all, that you position it as you're just being you,
Mhm.
turned up.
Yep.
That's not creating a character.
No.
That's being
it's building your character.
right.
Yeah.
Right. That's being you.
Mhm.
That's interesting, man.
Yeah.
So what happened? Like, let's dive in a little bit. What happens when it's all over? Because I was talking with one of our members who just so happens to be a psychotherapist, and like I was telling you in Clearwater, we're kind of talking about this a little bit. He deals with everybody just south of the criminally insane, so people dealing with legitimate medical issues, and then other people that are professional athletes, entrepreneurs who have spent years and years and years of their life building a brand, building a company, building their bodies, whatever, and then eventually just the natural progression of things, either you can't perform to that level physically, or you grow yourself out of your company to the point where you're no longer building it per se, you're managing everybody else that's continuing to build it.
Mhm.
And the transition away from that, from one level to the next, when it's your baby, your character, your identity,
Mhm.
when that inevitable transition takes place, a lot of people don't know what to do with it, don't know how to deal with it. And when I asked him, I was like, so in your opinion, your professional opinion, what is the number one reason that those people who, quote unquote, to the masses would seem to have it all, why are they sitting on your couch? He's, without skipping a beat, he said boredom.
Mhm.
Hands down, number one reason, boredom. Is that, would you say that's true?
Absolutely. And I think there's probably a couple other key elements that are part of that, but absolutely.
Yeah.
In the sense of what you're talking about with your friend, is a little bit different with like if coming from the wrestling side of it,
Sure.
or anything. I mean, coming out of the military, when
Yep.
you're used to that extreme, everything over the top, loud, boom, bang, flash, yay, boo.
Yeah.
It's adrenaline.
Mhm.
You
Yes.
get addicted to the rush.
Okay.
Okay, that makes sense.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So you get, and whether it's wrestling or jumping out of airplanes or
Mhm. CrossFit.
CrossFit or whatever it is that you've been so used to doing for so long, and that's what your body is programmed to get excited for, mentally, physically, whatever.
Right.
When it all goes away, well, now you got to fill that gap.
Right.
You got to fill that void. Well, there ain't that many things out there,
That can
at least
duplicate
that are
that.
good for you, that allow you to
Mhm.
kind of feel that rush.
Sure.
And then that leads to boredom, and boredom leads to a lot of other things. And,
Mm-hmm.
and then another part of it is just the, kind of like what I touched on earlier. You don't feel useful anymore.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, well, I don't know how to do anything else.
Right.
Can't go back to getting a normal job.
Right.
Yeah, I just went from that. Now you want me to just go get a job at Office Max? It's
Yeah.
just not going to feel. It's just not going to work.
Right.
Not that there's anything wrong with working at Office Max.
Sure.
But it's not going to fly.
Right.
Even if that works and if it does, it's going to be extremely temporary and it's going to go away quick.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So that's where it gets really hard, and that goes back to what I was saying earlier. It's the mental identification process that it makes it difficult to tolerate. And I think that's the case with wrestling. I think it's the case with our veterans.
Yep.
Same thing. I shouldn't say you're, because I don't know. I've never been there. But from what I understand and from talking and being around a lot of them,
yeah,
it's the same concept. It's like that brotherhood, the camaraderie.
Yep.
The adrenaline rush, the certainty of knowing what's, if I'm going down that road, my boys are coming with me, and we're gonna get it done.
Yeah.
Right.
You know what I mean? When you get transitioning back into civilian life, that all goes away.
Right.
So you're that safety net, that cushion net,
Mm-hmm.
it's all gone.
Right.
And so I think it's hard to,
Sure.
where people find it hard to transition.
Well, I think that that's interesting in the sense that, and Jeff, from football and my transition away from collegiate athletics into the Marine Corps, you don't necessarily miss the 2-a-day part. You don't miss practice.
Right.
You know what I mean? But you fall in love with, like, all the stories you tell are about the game.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
And then when it's all said and done and the lights go out, and I was really aware of this, not coming away from football, but definitely coming away from the Marine Corps, that there is no fade to black. The credits don't roll. There is no music. You know what I'm saying? It's just over, and then life goes on.
Mm-hmm.
You wake up the next day, and it's like, fuck, what's next?
Yeah.
Right? And you hear it all the time, and I'm sure you find yourself saying it quite a bit too. You don't necessarily miss the organization,
right?
But you miss your people, your boys, your Marines, your teammates, the other wrestlers, you know what I mean? The guys that you share the guys that you share that common ground with, and that was what was super interesting about this past Rush Club experience on the Veterans Day platform. And I must have said it 10, 12 times throughout the weekend. And even in talking about it in the last couple of days, is what was so awesome about it was being around the vets again and being able to, speak the same language in the same tonality, and nobody's offended and blah, 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 blah.
Right.
Everybody's on the same page.
Yep. Absolutely.
And you can, outside of like those organizations, you can't duplicate that.
Right.
And that's an extremely tough pill to swallow in transition.
Yep.
And like you were just saying, it's so easy if you don't have the forethought to see the end coming and put yourself in a position where you transition immediately into something else that simulates or duplicates that feeling, right? It's super easy to find yourself frustrated, depressed, and lost.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
So when you found Sonoran Desert, or they found you, that's kind of where I want to dive into. Like, what circumstances kind of present themselves that kind of created your salvation and got you out of your funk, so to speak?
Luckily for me, because besides wrestling, one of my passions has always been firearms.
Mm-hmm.
Ever since I was little, my dad, I was raised around him.
Mm-hmm.
My grandfather was a gunsmith.
Okay.
So his dad, so I grew up listening. My dad tells stories about what him and my grandpa built, and some of the rifles that my grandfather built, I still have to this day.
Okay.
So I've always been around that, and I can remember as a kid, I grew up hunting, but even before I was old enough to actually go out hunting, I can remember my dad coming home and, he'd go to take his shotgun apart to clean it. and I'd always sit down and help him. He'd let me take everything apart. So ever since I was young, to this day, anytime you open up a bottle of Hoppy's No. 9 gun oil, instantly takes me back.
Okay.
If I could wear that as cologne, I would. So I've always had a passion for that, and I was fortunate. Timing is everything, and I was fortunate that this next venture that was presenting itself happened to be something that I was passionate about. Not everybody is lucky to find that quick, but I was. So that's where it all got started, and the deeper I got into it, the more I really saw the big picture on what they're doing and who they're doing it for.
Sure.
And the more I got into that, and I've always been a huge patriot and a huge, I never did the military, but I've always been a huge supporter of the military. I have friends that have been in and are in, and so when I found out, it's like, man. And by the way, I just like to. I've always been one out there to help. I've always liked to help other people. I've always, if it means that I'm gonna have to walk through, a thing of broken glass to make sure that you're gonna make it all right today, then I'll do that.
Sure.
If that's what it is, and that's just kind of how I've always been. So I really got sucked into that aspect of it.
Okay.
And Gabe, the one I talked about earlier, that helped me find SDI and kind of got me involved. Did get me involved. He's a Marine, and he was also the guy that trained me. So when I started working for them, and the first thing I ever did was, or one of the first events I ever did was an IRR muster down in Tampa.
Okay.
And I'm like, this is just the coolest thing ever. And to see when I'd get a table for Marines in front of me, that they're going, what? No, college. I don't want to be told what to do anymore. I don't want to. No, that ain't doing it. And I would explain to them that, that listen, you earned that GI Bill. Don't let that go to waste. Use it, and here's why. And then I would explain the programs to them and what they can do with it all. And by the end of it, watching them get excited and go, all right, let's do it. You know what I mean? Watching that transition of no school to hell yeah, sign me up.
That's dope.
You know what I mean? So I got hooked on that. That's what I got hooked on. I get excited. I still get goosebumps when I'm sitting there and I see the excitement come across a veteran's face, going, "That is absolutely awesome. Absolutely, let's do this. Book it."
That's awesome.
So
man.
that's where I really got sucked into it. So.
So it sort of creates that feeling that you had from your past wrestling experience.
Heart starts pounding, adrenaline rushes.
Yeah.
I get tears roll in the eyes sometimes, goosebumps fly, and it's awesome when you see that for a number of reasons. A, you did a good job. You're doing you're doing something right. B, you're helping. I may have just helped that guy find the next 20 years of his life.
Right.
Yeah.
And if we get one or two, that's one or two.
Well, what's crazy about that? Because you just got done telling the story of wrestling ended, and that's who you allowed your identity to become, and then there was this gap, and then SDI came. What you're doing now is you're helping guys that are amidst the transition.
We're trying to
close the gap.
Yeah.
Yep.
Right. And that's like you see like the homeless vets standing out here on the side of the highway or whatever, they never got out of the gap.
Right.
You know what I mean? And there's so many guys out there, and some that are very, very close to me that I have discussions with on the regular about, not transitioning out because they don't feel that they have anything to offer the civilian sector, For guys to get lost in that mentality, the gap just gets bigger and bigger and bigger
deeper and deeper.
Bigger. Yeah,
it gets harder and harder to get out.
And what I love about your story and everything that you're doing now is you're taking your personal experience and how challenging and difficult that may have been for you, and you're really going out of your way to make sure to give people the opportunity not to feel that.
Absolutely.
And I think that's fucking awesome.
Absolutely. And that's our main goal. That's what we do. That's why we do it. So it's the more we can reach, the the better it is.
Mm-hmm.
So we strive. We do gun shows and we do a ton of expos and all kinds of stuff. But our military student body is probably 66% or more of
Sure.
our student body.
Okay.
That's crazy.
Active or not. We
Yeah.
have TA, so
Okay.
active or not. I'd say 66%. I think is what I was just in meetings yesterday.
Yeah.
So I think it's
That's beautiful, man.
yeah.
So take us down the rabbit hole of the Sonoran Desert Institute. What? It's not just a gunsmith school. You guys offer a bunch of other stuff.
firearms technology.
Okay.
Is
Got it.
Is that way it kind of houses it all.
Sure.
So it's an online college, Sonoran Desert Institute. If you want to check out the website, it's sdi.edu. And it gives you a rundown of, I'll give you the brief description, but you can actually go in and get a rundown and a good read up on it all at the website there. So it is a nationally accredited college that specializes in firearms technology. Now, under that umbrella would be ballistics and reloading, armorers courses, gunsmithing. We also offer an Associates of Science degree
Okay.
in firearms technology. It's a 2-year degree.
Mm-hmm.
So you can get your associate's degree in firearms science.
That's
Which
awesome.
is usually what, when you're talking to a guy that's, coming out of Marine Corps, you're like, wait a minute, I can get a degree in gun science?
They're jazzed about that.
Right.
Sign me up today.
Yeah.
Mic drop, I'm out, So yeah, so it's a really amazing program. And like I said, we've come a long ways, even just in the last 2 years. And it's grown so much, but it's all online. So you don't have to come to campus. You don't have to uproot your family. You don't have to leave your family behind to go to school. And as I said, it is, if you have military education benefits, we do accept them. GI Bill, Post 9/11, Montgomery, we're Title IV. So if you're active, you can use your TA.
Right on. Okay.
And obviously there's ins and outs to all of that, but we can, if anybody needs assistance on figuring that one out, we have people available that will help walk them through that process.
Mm-hmm.
Voc rehab.
Yeah.
So we take it all.
Okay.
We take it all. So it's just really neat. You get to learn. If you're passionate about firearms, whether you think you know them all or not, you're gonna learn.
Right.
You're gonna learn something from us.
Right.
It's an amazing program. The school itself has been around since 1921.
Wow.
Okay.
Now, obviously, it's evolved tremendously and is not at all what it used to be back then. But it's just an incredible program. Now you can, if you don't want to go do the whole 2-year degree route, we have individuals armorers courses. So if you just maybe want to, your favorite gun is a 1911, we have a 1911 armorers class. It's 8 weeks long. And then PS, by the way, we're going to send you some stuff and you get to build your own 1911 right at home and you get to keep it. It's your weapon.
That's crazy.
So now you get a couple college credits, a certification to completion, but you get a weapon.
That's pretty
Love
cool.
it.
Yeah.
Do you guys, within the SDI, do you guys see expanding? Because I see a lot of technology moving towards that 3D printers and people are making, replicating gun designs with 3D printers. Have you guys moved in that direction at all? Do you see any value in that technology, or is it just sort of old school, like learning the gun from the bottom all the way up?
Yeah, no, that 3D printing stuff, that's if you want to print out yourself an airsoft gun or a paintball gun, then have at it. But that kind of stuff is not, it doesn't really work.
Right.
It
Yeah. This is
doesn't
more
really
of like the hardcore guys.
Yeah. Well, if you want to, if that's something that you're actually passionate about and you want to do this as a career, you're going to do it the right way. And that's,
Right.
Going the manufacturer's route. And there's a lot more that goes into that.
Nice. What's the natural path once somebody gets their associate's degree out of school? Because I don't have a lot of experience in the gun area. What are some career paths that students usually take outside?
So a lot of our students like to open up their own shop. They want to work.
Nice.
A lot of them,
Yeah.
a lot of what I hear is, what do you want to do? I want to get my own, open up my own gunsmith store.
That's dope.
That's what most of it is. Now I don't know how many of them actually execute that. That's one way of doing it, and there's a lot of things within the gunsmithing world that one can do. There's like antique restoration and refinishing, bluing, checkering, kind of the old school, high end refinishing.
Okay.
Things today, Cerakote and Duracoat, and all the stuff out there, the fancy paint that everybody does. That's one thing, but the art of checkering and woodstock working and high-end bluing has kind of faded away.
Sure.
But those weapons, those firearms, are still very much around.
Right.
You know, you find somebody who's, you know, for instance, if I were to go into my grandfather's, you know, old safe, there's some high-end stuff in there, and you're not going to put Cerakote on that.
Okay.
You know what I mean?
Right.
You know, and some of those firearms, you know, have been neglected over the last 15, 20 years. So there's a very big market for doing high. It's the same as a car.
Yeah.
You know, it's like finding that old garage beauty queen that just needs a little restoration, a little love to bring it back to life.
Right.
So there's that part of it. You know, you can get into what's popular now is, you know, the AR stuff.
Yeah.
I call them they're like adult Legos. There's, you know, it's like the Honda Civic of firearms. There's nothing that they don't make for these things. You know what I mean? You know, you can. There's an attachment for it everywhere you go, and you know, if you want it to cook you breakfast, there's probably a way for it to figure that out. You know, I always make a joke and say, you remember the Beverly Hills Cop 3 or 4 when he goes to Sergio and he gets that big, huge gun to blow everybody up with at the end. You know, it's got a microwave oven, a radio. Like they knew back then where this was going.
Right.
So, but there's a huge market for it, and people love it. That's what's popular.
That's cool.
And you know, and there's a lot of things you can, because they're so versatile. And there are so many things you can do to that weapon.
Right. So you guys teach all the mods that go on it.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Everything.
So we actually in the two bigger programs, the advanced gunsmithing program or the associates program.
Sure.
We teach everything from, we start at black powder.
Okay.
And I mean, when I say, I mean they even go over the old blunderbusters from the pirate days.
Yeah.
You know, kind of the theory of how
ripping open, filling the barrel, the whole thing.
Yeah, flintlocks and
you
know, the whole 9 yards. So you learn everything from black powder all the way up to modern day firearms. So you're learning all platforms: pistols, rifles, shotguns, automatics, revolvers, black powder, flintlocks, the whole 9 yards. You're learning the history, the theory of everything. Why? What happens when that powder is ignited? However, you know, whichever platform we're talking about, what happens when that powder is ignited? It makes a small explosion inside of a chamber, which causes a projectile to be launched out of a barrel. You know, it's literally from beginning to end of the theory of how firearms are the way they are and why they are the way they are.
That's
awesome.
interesting, man. That's cool.
So for the novice folks out there, it sounds like the two macro career fields would be armor and gunsmith.
Yep.
What's the difference?
Armorers tend to generally be platform specific. So an AR armorer specializes in just AR stuff, AR platforms. A 1911 armorer, a Glock armorer is only going to be certified to work on Glock stuff. Right. Now, we don't do anything with Glock, so I'm not saying we do. But it's, in a sense, that's what an armorer. A gunsmith is knowledged in all platforms in all areas.
Okay.
So whether you bring him an over and under shotgun or an AR or an automatic or revolver, you know, they should be versified in any one of those platforms.
Got it.
Yeah.
Okay. All right.
Yep.
That's it. I found it interesting because just like going through your whole journey, you said you grew up with a background in firearms with your grandfather, your dad, and you took your transition through wrestling. I think it's awesome. And just talking about you going to SDI now, or just getting people, I can feel the energy that you bring, and you like. It's funny how it all ties together because we're talking about the charisma from wrestling, and now I've seen it lean over to what you're doing now, and you get me charged to bring join SDI, seriously, man. But and what's interesting is that, like you mentioned earlier, you'll walk through glass to help that next person, and what's so great is that you're helping people find their path, and they're not necessarily going through maybe the longer gap that you may have had, or they may be in a deep gap. Who knows? But you're helping them along with your journey and getting them to where they need to be. And I think that's interesting because you can gravitate towards your story, and it makes you like, I've been where you are, man. Here's how you can get out of that slump, because they can associate your pain and struggle and your successes, and now they can say, okay, he's done it. Now I can do it. And that's great, man. I acknowledge you. That's fantastic, brother.
Thank you. Well, you know how it is. It doesn't matter what it is. It can be basket weaving. If you're passionate about it, and you're real about it, and you actually believe in weaving baskets, and it's the greatest thing, you can make somebody a believer in basket weaving.
Right.
You know what I mean? So it's, I'm passionate about it. I'm passionate about what we do and why we do it and how we do it. And I love it.
That's awesome. Do you find yourself now that you've sort of rediscovered that, or you've moved your energy towards this passion now? Do you find yourself in a regular routine now? Like, what's your routine now that you've rediscovered that passion and that flame and fire? What are you doing on a daily basis that continues to drive that motivation?
The word regular doesn't really fit into my daily life whatsoever. There is, or routine for that
Yeah.
matter. I travel a lot.
I believe it.
So so part of what we do with SDI is we go to military events, we go to law enforcement conferences, we go to musters, we go to ed fairs, we go to Yellow Ribbon, we go to gun shows, we go to outdoor expos, we do bike, some bikers, some of the like Arizona Bike Week, so
Mhm.
we do all these events. So there's always something going on every weekend, every month, 365 days a year. So I am always somewhere.
Always on the go.
Yeah, I think last year I did 220 days on the road
Whew.
last year, just with or
Yeah.
211 days or something like that. So there is no regular routine, and if there was, the only thing I could tie to it would be getting on an airplane. So, but when I am home, and I have a remote office from home that I work from, I like to get up and around 8 o'clock, 8:30. I'm not really a big fan of getting up before the sunshine. I'll sit down, have a couple cups of coffee with my wife, and watch the news for a little while, and kind of get the day rolling that way. Go to the gym, get a workout in. Did you get a chance to go down to the beach gym?
We did.
Did Clearwater Beach Fitness down
Yeah,
there? Did you see
yeah.
Bushwhacker?
Yeah.
Was he there? Yeah.
I was.
So, you
I
remember
thought
the
it was so.
Bushwhackers?
I was so
No.
funny. I
The
was like,
Bushwhackers from wrestling.
Oh
That's
yeah,
right
yeah, yeah,
there.
yeah, yeah.
Luke, one of them, owns the gym that I train
Yeah.
at down there.
No
So,
kidding.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so that's
it was
my
so
little,
funny, man. Like I had so many down there in Clearwater Beach. Hulk Hogan lives down there.
Mhm.
So like there's this statue right outside the gym
Mhm.
that's like homage to Hulkamania.
No
Like I had so
kidding.
many child of the '90s nostalgia moments over the past weekend. It was just crazy,
That's
man.
nuts. I didn't even
Yes.
know that.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
funny.
Yep. So I get up, go to the gym, get my workouts in, get some emails and phone calls knocked out. My wife, bless her heart, she works extremely hard. She's always going at 110 miles an hour. We own a custom spray tanning salon down in South Tampa.
That's
So
cool.
that's her baby.
Okay.
We own it with her brother and his wife, so it's a family thing. And they just work their butts off down there. So they're real busy. She's usually down there 5-6 days a week, long days. So on the day that she has off, her and I, we like to just get up, go to our gym, get a few things knocked out, and just try to spend the day together. Whether it's going for a bike ride or hanging out, going out to dinner, or go see a movie, or nothing too crazy.
Yeah.
Just try to pump the brakes and put everything on hold as much as I can for at least a day and get some family
Sure.
time in. But usually by Thursday or Friday, I'm getting ready to jump back on a plane again and
Nonstop.
head back out to wherever it is that we're going that weekend.
That's crazy, man. But you're probably no stranger to traveling with the wrestling background. You guys are on the road around that same amount of time, right?
Yeah, pretty much. So if you add it all up between the wrestling and what I do now, what I've been doing, I've been living out of a suitcase for going on 8-9 years now.
Whew.
Yeah.
So I'm very excited about working my way
Out of that.
cutting that down a
Yeah.
I was
little.
gonna say, is there end in sight?
Well, and I say this, my wife and I joke about it all the time, and she's been with me since day one, since before I got my contract
That's
with wrestling.
cool.
So she's
Wow.
been there through it all with me.
That's amazing.
And I'm so used to being gone that
Yeah.
much, and she is so used to me being gone that much.
Yeah.
For me to be home more than 9 or 10 days in a row usually doesn't bode well for either one of us anyway. So usually by like that 8, 9, 10 day mark, she's like, "So you got a trip to go on here soon?" So I don't want to give it up completely. I enjoy traveling, and it gives me the opportunity. There's just no way that I can keep up via phone call with all the people I meet and the friends
Right.
that I've made in this industry. So I do enjoy getting out there and having that face-to-face time. But I don't know about 220 days of it.
Yeah, that's a
You know,
lot.
that's
That's
a
a
lot,
lot.
yeah.
That's a
Yeah.
lot of
Yeah.
travel.
So yeah, I'll be slow it down a little bit. But I
Sure.
won't stop doing it because I do enjoy being out there, and I do enjoy talking to people in person. And I always use this analogy, but it's touch, feel, smell.
Sure.
You can't ever get a true grasp for something until you touch it, feel it, smell it, see what
Right.
it's all about. And you just can't get that over a computer or phone. So,
Do you use SDI now as also an outreach platform as well to not necessarily recruit for SDI specifically, but just kind of enlighten the guys that are in transition that if it's not SDI, there is something to bridge that gap, and not to fall into the trap of identifying yourself with your identity becoming what you do and not yourself as a person. Does it meet does it meet both those requirements for you?
I think in a sense it does. That not necessarily. I wouldn't say that that's one of my
do it on
goals. Like I
Sure.
do it on purpose, but I think it just happens organically that
Right,
way.
right.
If I'm doing my job right,
Mhm.
or any one of my team guys is doing their job right, whether they end up signing up for our college or maybe talking to us just set a light bulb in their head,
Mhm.
I think that just kind of happens through osmosis. It just kind of that could just organically happen.
Right,
Nice.
right. That's awesome, man. That's awesome. I think that's something to be very proud of, but also present
Mhm.
for, is that you are facilitating that light bulb.
Mhm.
Whether it is with SDI or they decide to get up off their ass and go do something
Mhm.
proactive
Mhm.
anyway.
Yep.
That's
Yep.
huge, and I think that it's just so easy. And I can tell you from my military experience, how many times I was told prior to getting out that to do the safe thing and stay in.
Right.
Because there's this big, great unknown that's called civilian life,
Mhm.
and that uniform is very safe. If I'm sick, I go see doc.
Yep.
If I need to get my teeth cleaned, I set an appointment, and everything is taken care of. You get your housing allowance. Da 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 da
It's
da.
all literally kind of all in house.
Yeah,
Mhm.
Yeah.
it is very institutionalized, very socialized. And I don't say any of that to discredit my military service or anything like that, but that is a very real, that is the reality
Sure.
of that situation to a certain extent, and it is very challenging to let go of.
Sure.
And you find so many guys that get out and don't know what to do, or stay in because they don't know what to do.
Right. Right.
And for me, in starting the gym, I was fortunate that I had a commanding officer that said, you have a certain window to do what you want to do, and if you stay in, you're going to miss that window.
Sure.
So I pulled the trigger and got out.
Sure.
Right. But there's other guys that aspire to do stuff like open their own gunsmith shop, or try their hand at entrepreneurship, that don't, because somebody whispers in their ear that the safe thing to do is stay in.
Right. Sure.
So being able to facilitate action, and put you back in the driver's seat of your own life, you got to feel good about helping people do that, man.
Absolutely. I absolutely do. And that it, back to what we were saying earlier, that's what gives me that adrenaline rush now.
Yeah.
And going to these events, and we did a transition event with the Raider Project.
Yeah.
Last year.
Nick's cause is awesome. We're going to have him on the show in April.
Yeah, Nick's awesome, and I've become really good friends with Nick.
Mm-hmm.
And they've become a part of our school. We've not just, we tried it out once and it went great, and now we're doing more and more events with them, and in the Raider Project, and they do great things.
Mm-hmm.
And those transition events like that, they're a little different than a military transition event. It is because it's military. It's all military people, or former military people.
Right.
But when it's hosted in a civilian setting,
yes,
versus a transition event that you're on base at, that's being put on by a commander
Right.
or someone that they've facilitated or brought in, it's a different feeling, and it allows a little bit more of a personal connection as opposed to all right, I'm gonna punch in, do this over with because I was told to be here.
Mm.
They don't take away as much. They don't listen as much because they're not really taking it serious. At least some of them.
They're not actively seeking the next thing.
Right. Now, and they haven't, and this is one thing that I was informed of. Obviously, once again, I'm not speaking from experience. But
Sure.
that first 6 months, 12 months, 24 months, it hasn't even set in that you're out.
Oh yeah,
It hasn't set in yet. You're still
yes.
riding high from what you've been doing. It's not till that 2.5, 3, 4 year mark where you start doing that dive.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So that's what's great about guys like Nick
Yeah.
and the Raider Project, and what's that focus on that, because a lot of the people that are coming to those events like that, they're at that
They're ready.
that 2-3 year mark now, where they're going to start needing it or start to fall if
Right.
we don't do something to catch.
Well, I'll tell you,
So-
man. That's a very real timeline. I can tell you because you hang on to it for a very long time. And it's like when you introduce yourself and somebody asks you about who you are, like the first thing out your mouth isn't that, I own CrossFit PHX, I served in the Marine Corps, I did 4 years active duty or blah, 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 blah,
Sure.
blah, and it's extremely challenging to not tell those stories
Right.
or, manifest that identity
Right.
and to let that go. I played around with the reserves for 3 years after I got out, just so I could stay connected, and periodically get around people that like we were talking about in the
Get that
beginning.
fix.
Yeah,
Yeah.
get the fix,
Yeah.
and act like that he was comfortable.
Mhm. Yeah.
And it takes easily 2 to 3 years for that to kind of to wean yourself off of it, so to speak.
You know who actually told me that?
Who's that?
Derek Carver.
Really? Yeah.
That was this week, and I had the awesome opportunity to get to hang out with him a couple days in a row and just kind of
Love that guy,
know,
man.
just-
I just met him this
just
weekend.
shoot the shit and have a good time, and just talk on a level of not working.
Yes.
just a relaxing,
Mhm.
just two guys shooting it. And I was explaining to him kind of what we do.
Mhm.
He was asking, he asked what I was doing or what SDI did. I was explaining to him, and he's the one that told me that timeline.
Yeah.
So I thank him for letting me know that, because
Yeah.
that helps.
Well, I mean, for those of you who don't know, Derek Carver is an incredibly inspirational individual by happenstance. I bet if you asked him if he wanted to be the figurehead that he is now, he'd probably tell you, hell no.
Yeah.
But he's an incredibly dynamic individual who, as he would describe it, had a bad day at work.
I heard him say those exact
Yeah,
words.
a bad
Whatever,
day-
it's a bad day at work.
You're a bad
Like,
day at work
Man,
at
you are a positive individual.
yeah.
That's cool.
It is. He's a super cool guy.
Army Ranger, had a quote unquote bad day at work on deployment, ended up losing his leg, and is now an advocate for people not being limited
Mhm.
by their and other people's beliefs. If I'm not mistaken, he's the world's strongest adaptive athlete.
No kidding.
Yeah.
He's a beast.
Man, watch
Just a
watch
machine.
watch the Rush Club 009 live feed. He is the last duel of the evening, or second to last duel of the evening, and on one leg, strict press 135, 30 times unbroken.
No way.
Yeah, dude is strong, like
Just a machine.
chest out to here, machine,
He's a beast.
and but a really really solid dude. And when you can take somebody who's been through all of that, and they're describing that event that would for any number of people put them in a deep dark place,
Yeah.
describe it as nothing more than a bad day at work.
Mhm.
That just goes to show how much deep self work they've done with themselves,
Mhm.
and the conscious decision that you can make to get out of your own way and continue to be proactive, productive, and positive.
Mhm.
And that's exactly what you facilitate with SDI now, man.
He made a choice, and it's funny. I just said this yesterday. I was asked to come up with a bullet point or a phrase or something that how to stay positive in the workplace and make a conscious choice to be a positive in the workplace, and how that affects your coworkers and other people around you.
Mm.
And I have a habit, good, bad, or indifferent, of relating everything to a storytelling, because that's what I did in wrestling.
Mm-hmm.
That's what I grew up listening to my dad do. Everything's a story. And when it comes to life, you have the unique ability to write your own story. You are the editor, the publisher, the author. And if you wake, every day is a chapter in that story. And if you wake up every morning with a clear head and a clear picture of where you want to go and how you want to, essentially how you want to get there, or how you want the outcome to be, you make the choice to go out and clearly hit every one of those objectives in a positive way. This ending to your story, which you're in control of, will be a positive one. And through osmosis, your coworkers will be more productive and more positive in their work environment, and through osmosis, the people that they work with.
Mm-hmm.
So it all, it all comes down to you can sit around and be bitter and shitty. Then you're gonna have a bitter, shitty story. You know what I mean? And not a whole lot of people are gonna want to read it.
Right.
But if you wake up every morning and just, man, you know what? Life happens. It does. And you know what? There's a plot twist every now and then that it's unexpected. You just gotta take it head on and deal with it. And that's what Derek's done. And he is extremely good at getting that across to people in a positive way.
Sure.
I love that mentality.
I
love that.
Well, it's like I just said this this morning. As a matter of fact, I was talking with one of my coaches, and I said, when you stop buying your own excuses, you'll stop buying everybody else's too.
Yep.
Absolutely.
And I mean, like you said, life happens to everybody, good, bad, or indifferent, and you can make excuses about it, or you can overcome it and keep pushing forward. So like, I think that's a true testament to your story, brother. Is that you inevitably made a choice to pick yourself up and identify the fact that being a wrestler is not synonymous with who you are as Garett Bischoff.
Yep.
And to make that transition and go back to being productive. So I think that's a good place to end today. I think that's the message that we want to get across. But one thing I ask everybody on the show before we leave, and you can answer this in the physical, the spiritual, the mental. What's one thing that you do to feed yourself every day to get the fire lit, and then what's something that you do every day to fuel yourself to keep that motivation going?
Cheeseburger and no. That's a good question. I think my fuel, I guess. Well, we'll go with feed first because that's what that was the first one. So knowledge is power, obviously. So the more of that I can feed my brain, the better I'm going to be at what I do. The fuel is what we just got done talking about, and that is the watching what we do, helping other people achieve their goals in their life. That's my fuel. That's what drives me. Is my passion. So if
that's beautiful, man.
And that comes from a lot of different ways. My family, my wife. That's all part of it. So absolutely.
I love that, man. And where can the community support you? Any initiatives that you have going, whether it's social media, SDI, like where can we find you and support you?
Yeah, man. I'm on Twitter and Instagram, and it's at Garett Bischoff. 1 R, 2 T's. Twitter is a verified one. Instagram is not. So on Twitter, at least I'm the easy one to pick out on Twitter, but it's at Garett Bischoff. SDI, you can follow us on Twitter and Instagram. It's at SDI_school. And then Sonoran Desert Institute on Facebook. if you're something that everybody's interested in, I do a lot of live video feeds from our events directly to the Sonoran Desert Institute's Facebook page. So that's a really fun place to check in and see what's going on live instead of just reading a post or reading 140 characters. You can actually get out there and, we're doing live feeds from Texas Firearms Fest where we're watching, we're actually watching live machine gun shoots and getting interviews and, talking to everybody. So that's a fun way. So check us out on Facebook, and those are the big platforms that we use. So
awesome, man.
Dope, brother.
Absolutely.
Dude, thank you so much for sharing your
appreciate
story
you,
and being a part of the show. When what is amazing to us is when we find folks that establish that immediate connection and that authenticity. It's really our mission to share that message as soon as possible. And I really appreciate, I know we just met this past weekend officially, but I really appreciate you making the time while you're in town for this very short stint to take the time out of your busy schedule to be on the show, man.
Oh, absolutely. Thanks for having me down here. And once again, that goes all back to the amazing people we meet in these areas.
Right.
It all leads to this.
Right.
So it's an awesome thing.
Definitely, brother.
Yeah, bro.
So, as usual for our listeners, make sure you get out there and support everything that Garett's representing and the Sonoran Desert Institute, and be sure to follow that live feed on Facebook. Thank you guys so much for allowing us to be a part of your journey. We surely appreciate you being a part of ours. And check out the show notes, follow Garett and his mission, and after you listen to this show, give us that 5-star rating and leave us a review. Really appreciate it, guys. As always, feed me, fuel me.
And that'll do it for today's episode with our special guest, Garett Bischoff. If you want to connect with Garett and learn a little bit more about what he's doing, go check out the full show notes at feedmefuelme.com. Also, be sure to connect with us on social media, including Facebook, Snapchat, Instagram, and Twitter at feedmefuelme. We would love to hear from each and every one of you. We're excited to announce the Feed Me Fuel Me Summit on July 10th, 2017 here in Sedona, Arizona. Our keynote speaker will be Forrest Lustos. If you haven't had a chance to hear Forrest's story, be sure to check out his episode number 19, Mastering the Superficial and Becoming Exceptional. It's guaranteed to fire you up and make you take action. We'll be releasing event details in the coming weeks on the website and future episodes, and tickets are currently on sale right now, so check out Feed Me Fuel Me Summit on our website. If you found this episode inspiring in any way, please rate, comment, share, and subscribe so we can continue on this journey together. Also, be sure to share it with your friends and family on social media, including Facebook, Snapchat, Instagram, and Twitter, or any other social platforms that you use. We really appreciate you spending your time with us today and allowing us to join you on your journey. We would love to hear your feedback on this episode, as well as guests and topics for future episodes. To end this episode, we would love to leave you with a quote by Doug Cooper. Identity cannot be found or fabricated, but emerges from within when one has the courage to let go. Thank you again for joining us, and we will catch you on the next episode.